Hello again, and welcome to another Wellness Way USA podcast. I'm your host, Jeb Odom, and today we have in studio with us Lori Newcomer and Dr. Robert Corvino. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Today, exciting conversation about diabetes. Nothing really you want to talk about, but something you have to talk about, I believe. So, Lori, you want to take it away?
Yes, we'll start with maybe explaining what diabetes is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So diabetes is really easily defined just as high levels of blood sugar. So we'll measure this a couple different ways, but a couple of the most main ways would be looking at things like your fasting glucose and your A1C levels. If we find that you have high blood sugar levels over time, then you'll get that functional diagnosis of diabetes.
Okay, so it's not, and we're talking about type 2 diabetes, correct?
Yes, type 2.
Okay, so this isn't immediate. This is something that happens possibly over a longer period of time. I believe that it's maybe has to do with, diet or exercise or lifestyle, things like that. I think all of those kind of have contributing factors, whether we do or we don't, or how we exercise or how we eat. So who would be at greater risk for type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, so, just for anyone who doesn't know the difference between type 2 and type 1, so type 2 diabetes is going to be essentially a slower onset. Type 1 diabetes is actually a genetic change that causes a lack of the body's natural ability to produce insulin. So because of that change, the body actually has difficulties producing insulin, and that's what causes the diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, what we're seeing over time changes in what's called insulin resistance, whereas essentially the body has to tolerate such high levels of sugar for such a long period of time that it needs to secrete more and more insulin to actually begin ridding that sugar from the bloodstream. So who would be at a greater risk? A greater risk would be, going back to what you just said, somebody who maybe doesn't have the best diet, somebody who eats a lot of refined carbohydrates, things that are going to spike that blood sugar on a day-to-day basis. Even people who have more of a sedentary type lifestyle, constantly, maybe they have an office job, sitting at work. Maybe when they get home from work, they enjoy just resting, sitting on the couch. Anyone who has that non-active style life is going to be someone who's at a greater risk for developing type 2 diabetes.
And just because someone doesn't necessarily exercise, we say maybe as much as you should, or maybe they don't eat as good as they should, it still doesn't mean that you're going to get type 2 diabetes. It just seems like maybe those things are increased risk factors.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does not necessarily mean that, in the future you will have diabetes if you are sedentary, if your diet's not the best. They're just risk factors going forward for specifically having a higher risk to develop it in the future.
So what is it, more exercise or is it more food? I mean, what's the reality?
It's definitely it definitely plays a role. Both play a role in the development. I would say that the greater importance would lie in your diet. There's a lot of people who tend to try to put exercise in the forefront, but it's really when we change our diet that we start seeing these significant changes in our blood sugar. And especially when we start targeting things like, what type of carbs are we eating? Are we eating enough fiber? Are we eating enough vegetables? Are we eating refined sugar and refined grains on a day-to-day basis? When we start to eliminate these foods is when we're going to see the biggest changes.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two scenarios. One, you have a person that eats an entirely whole food diet, that does not eat many, if any, processed foods, and does not eat much or a significant amount of processed sugar. Okay. Then we have the other person that eats what they want and exercises. Which one
I feel like you're talking about the two of us.
No, really, it wasn't. So you have the one person that doesn't exercise, but they eat well. And then you have the one person that does exercise, but doesn't really pay attention to eating well.
Oh, okay. Because I'm the one who eats whatever I want and doesn't exercise. So I guess that, yeah.
Well,
okay,
and what we learned from learning about things like in life, right? And I'm not going to be hard on anybody because honestly, everybody's different. You could be more healthy than I am, and I work out every day and I try and eat right because your body is just better at adapting to it. You know, that's the things that we learn as we go through this process.
I definitely feel I'm healthier than you.
Everybody's individual. We can argue about that later.
We will definitely measure that one day.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
We're not using the BMI thing. I can tell you that.
Are we going to race?
We're getting
Yeah, we could
labs.
race.
No, we're getting labs.
Okay, so what are your scenarios? I'm sorry.
So it was, a strict eater or a strict exerciser. Which one would be better in the let's see, preventing to moving to that, diabetes?
I would argue that it would definitely be the whole foods diet. The reason being is because diabetes is pretty much a function of what you're eating. You know, your blood sugar is not going to be high if you're not putting things in it that's going to spike your blood sugar. Whereas someone who's exercising, sure, they're going to lower their blood sugar via exercise, but they're still putting things in their body that's going to spike their blood sugar. So at the end of the day, if you're eating a completely whole foods diet, you're avoiding refined carbs, avoiding refined sugar, you're not going to be eating anything that spikes your blood sugar, which means you're not going to give yourself a chance to develop those types of conditions.
Refined carbs spike your blood sugar?
Yes.
Okay. See, that's honestly, I think a lot of people don't know that. Just from the people I know and what they know about nutrition that aren't really in it like we are, they don't know that.
And that brings up a good point. So there is a measurement called glycemic index. The glycemic index of food is the measurement of how much of food is going to spike or elevate the blood glucose level. The higher the glycemic index, the more elevated the blood sugar response will be. The lower the glycemic index is going to be the opposite.
Okay, so refined sugar, super high.
Refined sugar, as high as it
so
goes.
since I'm very good at managing my diet 100% of the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll have to. We're on air.
So a lot of the times what I do to make myself feel better is if I eat my refined sugar, which I shouldn't, right? I'll eat like an apple with it. And so I'm trying to trick my body to say that was just all one big apple.
What is it? A candied apple?
No,
a caramel apple?
It's a regular apple.
It was from the fair.
It's more about making myself feel better.
Got it.
How do you deal with the sugar
So you
cravings?
put pineapple on the pizza and be like, oh, it was fruit?
I don't even count that.
Oh.
So sugar cravings, there's a couple really interesting topics and thoughts about that. But one of the biggest things is that sugar cravings are actually developed from over-consuming sugar. So most of the people that I work with, we will
Why are you
go.
looking at me?
I'm looking for your reaction. That's all.
Because I understand why that one box of Girl Scout cookies turned into 3 over the weekend. Because
Does it always have to be, that thing that you that affects you poorly, or could it be like that you really just like sugar?
So what can happen? A couple of things can happen. First off, if your body craves something, sometimes it means it needs it. In the case of sugar,
I need Girl Scout cookies.
we really don't need sugar in the way that we crave it. So when we typically have a sugar craving, what's actually happening is we're having a hormonal response to our past sugar intake. And because our hormones respond in a certain way, it actually triggers cravings. So when I work with people, typically the first week that I'm working with them and I start to get them off these foods, they'll go through a sugar detox.
They hate you.
And after that week, they do hate me. And after that week, they actually don't have cravings anymore.
And you're looking at me because we're starting that whole detox thing. And you just want me to get
so
serious.
that's about where y'all are in the process.
Yes.
So we're talking about it as it's happening.
He's
basically.
okay right now. Next week, I'm not going to be a fan.
And has the bruises on him?
Oh, yeah. No. I am curious. Growing up, I never had sugar. I mean, the maybe yogurt with fresh fruit was like, that was dessert. And now that I'm older, I'm like, sugar, I want to eat dessert first. I mean, I go to a restaurant over picking what dessert they have, their dessert menu.
I'm the same way.
but I don't like chocolate, but I mean the dessert and the sweet part. So is that because I was deprived of it as a child, or
It could be.
I mean, I had a banana split was like my birthday
As you
cake.
get older, do you want more sugar, or is that just something weird? I mean, I don't know.
I think it definitely could be
I
psychological.
went through most of my
That's
late
probably my
20s
problem.
and
Most of
early
it's
30s
psychological.
not eating much sugar. So I don't know. It's weird now.
Now you need to make up for it. Is that what you
well,
think?
no, but I did drink alcohol then, so I don't now. So maybe it's like one of those things where my body's like, hey, we're missing that. How long does your body remember things like that? How long does it take to adapt?
Honestly, I would say the body adapts pretty much immediately. It's just that creating
So you're saying it's in my mind.
creating a pattern.
That's a nice way to
Yours
say it's
is
all in my
mental
mind.
It's
also.
difficult.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, to get back kind of on topic, what is ancestral eating?
So
Should I eat like corn and like bears?
ancestral eating is a
Did you just say eat bears?
Well, I don't know what my ancestors ate, but I would assume something close to
Hopefully you meant gummy
deer,
bears.
deer, maize, obviously.
Are bears harvested for food in this country? Does it ever happen?
I bet Indians ate everything. I mean,
But now, what about now?
I don't
Do
know.
they still eat bear?
I have a chief bear in our family, great grandfather.
Can we call him?
He passed
Yeah, let's
away.
Oh, okay.
In the
Can we go the
70s,
next
but-
next one in line? Maybe you still got that number. We'll record it. We'll get this call going. We'll be like, hey,
Actually,
you
that
guys
would,
still eat bear, right?
that would be my brother. We could give him a call.
Maybe just a text.
Yeah.
Give us a text and see if we get it by the end of the show.
Okay, I'll give him a text and ask him if we still eat bear.
I don't even know if it's legal. Like, I know there's,
We could Google that too.
yeah.
All right.
but we got off. So is eating bear make you more susceptible to type 2 diabetes? Have you ever researched the history, about type 2 diabetes? Is it more with our modern era than it was before?
Yeah, type 2 diabetes is definitely more prevalent nowadays. There's been a lot of changes in the Western diet over the last couple decades, and we've definitely seen significant increases in type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity.
And you're saying it's because of diet.
And it's all because of that change to the Western
And
diet.
probably a little exercise too.
And what we've done is we've tried to preserve our food, and we've been very successful at it. But what happens is when we preserve our food, we keep the shelf life a lot longer, so we can decrease the prices, which is great. But at the end of the day, it causes changes in our absorption rate, and that's what causes these spikes in blood sugar. So that westernized diet is one of the complete reasons why we're seeing such increases in type 2 diabetes.
So back to the point, Lori.
It's dotting there. I'm waiting for a text back. Oh, we're getting back on topic.
Back on the
Okay.
topic, yeah, because I think I kind of
Ancestral eating. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is ancestral eating? So ancestral eating is basically going back to your heritage, going back to your genetics based upon your ancestry, essentially.
How far back are we going?
We're going back to the beginning of time.
Whoa.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I talk about with people is I like to break it up into a couple groups just to explain it. So when you measure someone's, what we call it is a macronutrient profile, what we're looking for is we're looking for the foods that the body is going to respond to the best that isn't going to cause a spike in blood sugar. So which is really interesting is the body will actually respond different no matter what. So if I have 10 people, they all eat the exact same carb load, every single person's blood sugar spike is going to be completely different. And because they're completely different, what we found is that we can't have everyone eat the same diet. We have to have everyone eat a diet based upon specifically their own genetics. So ancestral eating is measuring your genetics and finding specifically what type of profile you should be eating. So breaking it up into a couple different groups to better understand it, the easiest one to understand is going to be like an Eskimo, or like the Alaskan Eskimos, the northern Canadians. what they eat is they eat a diet that's very, very high in fat and protein. So they're eating things like seal, whale, elk, stuff like that. They don't eat a lot of carbs. And what we've seen is when they change their location and they come down to more of the southern states, they will start seeing these huge spikes in blood sugar, changes to a lot of weight gain. And that happens because their body genetically responds better to these high fat, high protein diets. Now, completely conversely, if we talk about like Africans have developed a diet based upon more grains, grazing, fruits, vegetables. So what we see with them is their blood sugar is going to respond better in response to eating diets that are higher in whole grains, vegetables, and less meat. So it's really important to find specifically for you, what is that diet, what is optimal for you, and what's going to help you regulate your blood sugar instead of having a cookie cutter type diet.
So Irish, their bodies used to like mashed potatoes and beer. I mean, have you ever been to Ireland?
I mean, I think you could say culturally that many people have a diet that you could probably, fingerprint, so to speak,
Absolutely.
that most of the culture eats. Like, here in the South, we tend to have a culture of eating, which is different.
Butter on everything.
Which is, in my opinion, not necessarily terrible. As long as it's real grass-fed butter.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like we're all different, and we're all way different than we used to be.
We're all different.
So as we see those cookie cutter diets and nutrition programs, maybe that's not the best for us, right? So
Absolutely.
How do we know? How do we know what's the best for us? We got to take these tests. We're going to get our...
Yeah, the easiest way, without taking a test or without doing a profile, is to eat the foods that keep you full the longest. So the foods that keep you full the longest, if you guys were here, I'd draw this for you. But to put it into picture, the foods that you eat and digest really fast and are immediately hungry. So for example, for me, sushi. If I eat sushi, I'm hungry in like an hour. I can eat as much sushi until I'm as full as possible. In an hour, I'm hungry. Why? Because my body metabolized it extremely fast. I had a huge blood sugar spike, and I'm hungry again. Whereas if I eat something that makes me really full, really long, that spike actually becomes more gradual. So you see a lot less gradual blood sugar spike, and I'm not spiking my blood sugar in a way that's causing the onset of diabetes.
How do you know? How do you know what spikes your blood sugar?
And that's going to come back to understanding what types of foods you should and shouldn't be eating, and then playing around with your diet. What foods are keeping me full the longest?
Ribs keep me full. Spaghetti does not. Ribs does.
So processing meat, is it any meat or just ribs?
Probably any meat, but I like ribs.
Yeah, so I would argue that you would be on more of that protein fat side as compared to that carb side. I would say that about 60% of people are closer to the protein fat side. Half are right down the middle, where they're going to respond really well to a little bit of both.
Okay.
So what about meat? The overall, let's just say a plate. How much your plate is what? Can you go over that? The ratios? Like, what do you, and I know everybody's different, and I know we're not all the same, but would you say that you would like to see 2/3 of the plate vegetables and 1/3 meat? Or would you like to see a different ratio, or it depends on the person?
It's all going to depend on the person. It's all going to be based upon, like I said, the foods that keep them full the longest. Whatever you realize keeps you full the longest, then you're right. So let's say for Lori, like protein is going to keep her the longest. So I would like for her plate to probably be about 2/3 meat, maybe a quarter meat.
Wow.
And then some really, really high quality greens. So maybe like some sauteed spinach. And I would probably limit her intake of complex carbs. So maybe a half a sweet potato, maybe just a little bit of quinoa, some brown rice, but not a lot, because what we found by her response to spaghetti is that that's not a food that's going to keep her full the longest.
And the craving for sugar too, that we both have, right? Does that indicate something to you?
Yeah, so the craving for sugar, really what's happening is when you intake certain types of food often, your body actually over responds to those foods. And because of that over responding, your hormones will either spike or be too low. And your body always wants to be in a state of homeostasis, which is essentially just right down the middle. And if it's not in that state, your body's going to do something drastic to get it back to homeostasis. Well, that drastic thing it does is it craves. So it will crave sugar because your sugar's too low. And it all starts with your sugar being too high.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing if your sugar's low in that scenario.
It's not necessarily a bad thing if you don't give in to the craving.
Okay.
But
so what you're saying is you've basically changed your scale of where your body thinks naturally the sugar level should be. So you've made it used to having more, and it wants more.
Do you
Is that
hear
it?
this? He's really trying to make it okay that he eats
No.
sugar.
I'm
I see
actually
you're trying
trying
to talk yourself into it.
No, I'm trying to figure out why it's so tough. That's it. I have much less trouble eating, not eating, like in a fast. I have much less trouble than when I eat, choosing not to eat some type of sugar during my eating.
Yeah.
So that's strange to me.
Yeah, the hardest thing when it comes to diabetes, which I'm sure that you guys both know someone who has diabetes. When it comes to people with diabetes, everyone has seen them say, "My sugar's low, I need something to eat." The reason their sugar gets low is because they've lost that regulated homeostasis of blood sugar. So rather than having these fine maxes and fine mins of how high and low their blood sugar goes, they actually go above and they go way below.
So you're trying to manage your homeostasis through eating sugar.
Yes.
Instead of letting your body do it through your pancreas.
Exactly. And the reason they have to do that is because their pancreas has become exhausted. Because of these high levels of blood sugar, now when we have these drastic lows, the pancreas has been overstressed. And the pancreas, due to that exhaustion, so pancreas exhaustion is essentially what causes the onset of diabetes. When you eat high levels of sugar for a long period of time, the body becomes resistant to insulin. And what that means is when you secrete insulin, your body's not responding as well. So you need more and more and more insulin. Well, the pancreas, when it produces this insulin, eventually becomes exhausted. And that's when you start to see changes in how much insulin you can actually produce.
Okay, so let's say you've gotten to this point, probably like me, and you want to correct it. Is it just as simple as stop eating sugar or processed carbs as well?
Are you asking other ways to lower your blood sugar?
I'm not quite by the script so much on this question. I'm more asking
How to get rid of diabetes? Or
a safe, effective way to bring the sugar level down for people. Because I know not everybody's the same. Like my mom would be really terrible if she didn't eat any sugar. My dad, who had diabetes and passed away from complications of it, he never complained if he didn't eat. Never, not one single time. The only thing he did tell me was that he had two things happen. One, he had extremely bad headaches. The other thing is that he craved sugar like never before in his life. So he would say he would eat like whole bags of, candy of some sort. But then he would say that he also had these headaches, whenever it didn't necessarily respond to what he ate. It was just headaches that was uncommon. So,
is that normal if you have diabetes to crave sugar?
That's why I'm asking is like, how are these people that may be on the verge, that metabolic syndrome, how can they safely and maybe how can they safely come back to a normal? Mm-hmm. And how can they help repair that process in their body? And how can they do it the way that they're going to feel the best about it? I guess it's a 3-part question,
Yeah,
but
that's
you
good.
probably cover them all anyway.
So first off, all of the symptoms that your dad was feeling, that's very normal. Those are all symptoms of hypoglycemia, and that happens for the exact reason we were talking about, is because the homeostatic level of blood sugar has become shifted, and now it goes way too high and it goes way too low. So those are all very normal symptoms of when a diabetic patient goes into hypoglycemia. So what they'll do then is they will begin to eat foods to bring them back to regular. So what it's really important for patients going through this to do is going to be, when you do, get into that state, it's really just important to start changing what you're eating. If you crave sugar, don't have a cookie, right? Eat like a
Fruit, orange.
Eat like
Like a whole food carb,
whole food,
like a leafy green.
Yeah, preferably, maybe a grain, maybe
Okay.
maybe brown rice.
Okay.
Something that is not going to spike the blood sugar, but will reverse that craving, right? And then learning to now there's going to be a big difference between
dig into
people.
this. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of where a lot of people are trying to figure out how to be.
Absolutely. There's a big difference between someone who is insulin dependent. When you get to the state where
You can't manage it yourself.
insulin dependent,
Yeah.
that's actually the state where the pancreas has become so exhausted that it's not producing as much insulin as is needed, and the medical doctor will actually prescribe insulin to be taking every day. When you get to this state, that is very difficult to change. Now, you can make changes to your blood sugar by making better choices, by eating the right foods instead of the wrong foods. However, because you're at a state where you're insulin dependent, that is going to be very, very difficult to, we'll say, reverse. That would be something that would be managed over time. And, I would educate the patient onto simply how to make better choices. For someone who is not insulin dependent, way different story. That's someone who their pancreas isn't at the point where they can't, they're not secreting enough insulin. And really all we're trying to do is we're trying to change the body's ability to respond to insulin. There's a couple really, really easy ways to make changes to the body's response to insulin. First thing is just simply going to be choosing better food options, right? Not eating your refined grains, not eating your refined carbs, eating more your whole foods, vegetables, high fiber foods. Second thing, one of the biggest ways that they've found in research to actually increase insulin sensitivity, which is the opposite of insulin resistance, is exercise. Exercise is going to be huge.
So basically what you're saying is if you increase insulin sensitivity, you don't have to use as much of it for it to affect your body the way it needs to.
Exactly. It's allowing for the body to absorb, we'll say, more glucose through that insulin as compared to that insulin getting to the cell and the cell not responding.
Yeah. It's like opening up that pathway
Exactly.
a little bit more. Okay.
So exercise is going to be absolutely huge. And when I say exercise, I mean sometimes people are going to want to do lifting, but the biggest and best exercise is going to be cardio.
Okay.
So you're saying that diabetes isn't forever, basically, with that?
Diabetes it's really a function of behavior. It's a function of diet.
And we're talking about type 2.
Yes.
Right?
Type 2.
Yes.
And you're talking about before you get to that point of no return.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you get to the point of no return, you can still manage it. You can still get great results. However, it's very, very difficult to see major changes if there is actually damage that has been done to the pancreas.
Okay. So let's go from a healthy person and then to those first stages of that metabolic syndrome. What is a patient going to notice? How do they know I need to see a doctor? I've got a problem. I need to adjust my diet. What are those? Is there any indicators other than like we talked about, like my dad had, and that's not every patient, but do you notice anything? Do your patients tell you anything?
Biggest symptoms for diabetes right away are going to be increased urination.
Like going more often?
Going more often.
Okay.
A lot more often, because what's happening is high blood sugar, it tells the body to get rid of. right? The body doesn't want high blood sugar, so it's going to excrete it. So
Yeah,
it
I know
causes
my
you
dad had that as well.
yeah. So high blood sugar, and then extreme hunger. Hunger is going to be huge, and
Not
then
just sugar craving, but
not
hunger
sugar
in general.
cravings. Yep, being hungry, and that comes with that hypoglycemia, right? So that's when the blood sugar actually goes too low. It's going to be that increased desire to eat, and then lastly is going to be what's called nocturia, which is going to the restroom at night. So a lot of people will. I've worked with a couple diabetic patients, and they'll wake up sometimes 2 to 3 times every night to go to the bathroom, and they think it's normal, but it's actually not. You really shouldn't be waking up to use the restroom at night.
Okay, I do that now.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up 2 or 3 times, and you know how I get when I'm hungry. So but I think I've always been
Are
this
these
way.
some warning signs?
Well, that can be, that it can be due to other factors
Right,
as well.
right.
It's not just blood sugar.
But it is something to pay attention to.
It is something to pay attention to. A lot of people when they go to the doctor, they'll ask you on the questionnaire how many times do you go to the restroom a day, and there is a number. I don't have a specific number for you, but if it's more than a certain amount of times, then it is something to look into.
And most GPs, general practitioners, would pay attention to that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This diabetes is one of the most common diagnosed illnesses in the United States.
Okay, where do you differ from that point? Where do you differ from what we know of how GPs treat this problem to how you would manage a diet for this problem? But what would be the difference that you would see?
Yeah, the main difference is that, like a primary care, so they're going to give a medication that's going to help to modulate blood sugar. So something like metformin, which is really just going to modulate your blood sugar levels. So we're taking high blood sugar and we're helping to lower it.
But there's some risk with taking metformin. It's not. You're putting in something in your body that man-made, basically. So maybe a person like me wouldn't want to go that route. So if I wanted to do a natural approach, how would I go about that?
A natural approach is really going to come down to, like we've been discussing, making sure that you're understanding how food is going to respond when you eat it. Eating the foods that keep you full the longest. Avoiding sugar. Avoiding refined grains. Making sure that you're eating things that are high in fiber. Getting your vegetables in. Eating your green leafy vegetables a couple times a day. Avoiding white rice. Avoiding white potatoes.
So making a complete life change.
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle change.
And we try to be healthy, and I try to be healthy as an example for our members. But I can tell you this, it's not easy. You think you got it. I'm a man, I can handle this. But you are in that head all the time, fighting these cravings, fighting these, I don't want to go work out right now, fighting these, all these factors. So it's a challenge.
Absolutely.
And many people may not want to do it that way and think that prescription will fix everything.
And the hardest thing that I've seen and what I try to explain to people is it is very hard. It is hard to make a complete lifestyle, complete diet change. But when it comes to diabetes, the difficult thing with diabetes is that there isn't a lot of pain associated with the condition. So you guys know, because I talk about it a lot, that I mostly work with gastrointestinal patients. There's a lot of pain associated with GI conditions.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me and they have really bad IBS, I can tell them to do anything, and they're going to do it because they're in so much pain that they want to get rid of it. Unfortunately, with diabetes, in the beginning of diabetes, there's not a lot of pain. And the only reason that that's not good, now I don't want anyone to be in pain, but it's that because they don't have a lot of symptoms, they don't recognize the need to change.
Or the warning signs.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of times it takes years and years and years for them to start seeing changes in their vision, changes in their kidneys, changes in their sensation before they actually will realize how much damage has been done to their body.
Now, what makes diabetes so dangerous?
Well,
Other than that not knowing when it's coming. The
Yeah,
morning.
when you have high levels of blood sugar, so blood sugar is going to damage any tube that it's in. Anytime that there's high levels of blood sugar, it changes the equilibrium of the tube, and that tube is going to ultimately suffer damage. So that tube could be an artery, that tube could be a nerve, and essentially whatever's happening is you're suffering damage when the blood sugar is consistently high. So the most common secondary conditions would be things like a neuropathy, which happens with a lot of diabetic patients. Will have changes in their neurology because the excess sugar has changed and caused damage to those nerves. So they lose sensation in their feet, they lose sensation in their fingers, they start feeling numbness and tingling, right? Even sometimes to the escalation of needing an amputation. That's a very long term, but unfortunately something that does happen.
So why, and maybe we'll have to dig into this deeper later, but how does that work? How does sugar cause that damage?
That really comes down to the chemistry. So I can't explain to you all the chemistry, but essentially it changes the equilibrium because there's always a balance of water and a balance of sugar. So the body, like I was discussing, always has its homeostatic region. And that place of homeostasis is extremely important with everything. And that's why you have all these hormones. That's why you have all these chemical messengers that tell your body to increase or decrease. It's like the air conditioning, right? If you put the air conditioning on 70 and it gets to 72, well, the cool is going to turn on to bring it back to 70, but it's going to drop below that. When it gets to 68, the heat's going to turn on to bring it back.
It's like the gain,
Exactly.
things like that, yeah.
So potassium, calcium, sugar, water, every single thing in the body is regulated. And it's regulated by some sort of chemical messenger. So when there is excess of anything, you're going to see changes in that homeostasis. And that homeostasis, ultimately, if it's not regulated, is what causes disease states.
Yeah, or if it can't correct it. It tries, but it can't.
Absolutely.
So that's when people would have to go on some sort of medication usually, or
Correct.
maybe a diet change.
Mm-hmm. Every disease is ultimately just a change in the chemical homeostasis of the body.
And then basically how that affects either when it's correct or not correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, when we see changes in blood sugar, we're going to see changes in neural activity. We're going to see changes in, we can see damage to blood vessels. We can see damage to the nerves in the eyes. That's when we see things like a retinopathy, which is change in vision.
So you say we're supposed to have some sugar in the blood or in the blood environment.
Absolutely.
What if you don't eat sugar?
So the body actually can naturally produce carbohydrates. If the body, if we define something as an essential nutrient, what that means is that it is essential to be eaten because the body cannot produce it. If it is a non-essential nutrient, then the body can actually chemically produce it, and that's the reason why it's not essential, because the body can make it itself. So carbohydrates are actually non-essential nutrients, as much as we might think that they are. The body can actually produce sugar. So whenever our body is actually low in sugar, we will produce more.
How?
How?
Yeah, just simply.
Yeah, very simply. So there's a couple biochemical processes that occur mostly in the liver, and the liver will actually produce glucose molecules because glucose is very, very important for energy production. And one of the biggest things I like to tell people is we like to give bad raps to nutrients, sugar, cholesterol, fat, but every nutrient is actually needed. We need everything, and we need a certain amount of everything. So we should never say that, sugar is necessarily the worst, or fat's the worst, or
I know. I ask you like maybe like every other week.
Exactly.
How much sugar should we eat?
We do need.
And you would never give me a good answer.
We do need sugar.
He gives you a good answer. It's just not the one you want.
It's like none.
None.
Exactly. We do need sugar. We do need carbs. We do need fats, but we need the right type. And that's where it comes in.
So if sugar's a problem for someone, like me, and I say, I'm just going to try not to eat any processed sugar that's not, from a whole food diet, right? I should be okay to do that, right?
Absolutely. Now you will get, now what people don't realize is you will get sugar from your other food,
Right.
right? You're going to get sugar from your grains.
Of course.
Because when you break down a grain, you metabolize glucose. When you break down vegetables, you're going to get some glucose. When you break down fruit, you're going to get glucose. So you are getting sugar per se from other foods. It's just that when we speak about it, we're talking more in like that simple table sugar.
Yeah, and I hope everybody understands, when we say you don't eat sugar, it doesn't mean you're not getting any in your diet.
Correct.
But where you're getting it is from a source that maybe won't elevate that blood sugar level.
Absolutely.
By a lot of things, basically the fiber helps. Is there any other thing in food that helps? Because I know fiber, but I'm not sure if there's anything that, anything else that helps with it. Like, so the fiber does. Is there anything else?
There is a mineral called chromium. So making sure that you're getting, your essential vitamins and minerals is always going to be important for regulating blood sugar, just for optimal function of cells. Chromium is a mineral. Chromium is really beneficial. Chromium helps with insulin sensitivity. So I always make sure that, diabetic patients are getting adequate levels of chromium.
Yeah, and we all read a lot of medical research and studies and things like that, and I find it hard to go against taking some sort of supplement for getting adequate minerals and vitamins. It seems like anybody you listen to, they debate it out, and at the end, they pretty much come to a conclusion that says, hey, rather than paying for that test to find out if you need it, just take them. Take a good, high-quality multivitamin. It's probably the best one you could recommend, and that's what you tell us.
Absolutely.
So what do we have next, Lori, on the sheet? Did we run them all yet?
Is there anything else that you wanted to address? Because y'all went rogue.
Yeah, well, I think I like to follow the flow. And if I have a question that comes up, maybe other people do too. So did you have any questions, Lori, that came up during that?
No.
No? Okay. So how about this? I got one question. If I eat a pint of ice cream or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every night.
I can come up with one of those questions.
Okay, well,
but go ahead.
Yeah, how does that affect me?
The pint of ice cream.
Either one. Yeah.
So that actually brings up a really good point. I'm glad that you asked that question.
We try here.
There is something that some people explain as a fat bomb. Okay, so fat.
Excuse me.
Fat bomb.
FATBOMB. Fat bomb.
Yes.
Okay, he's not a rapper. No.
Could be.
Could be.
Okay, drop your fat bomb on us. What is it?
Yeah.
So fat bomb. So
you're laying down some fat bombs right now.
If you are trying to avoid gaining weight, avoiding refined sugar and carbs is going to be very important. Now, contrary to what we learned a couple decades ago, what we're starting to realize now is that fat really is not the enemy. That fat is actually good when it's undamaged and healthy fat, right? So it's going to give us adequate levels of fat to help us produce essential things like hormones and support brain health. So fat is actually very, very important.
The building blocks of things in your body. Absolutely. It needs it for that.
So now a fat bomb is...
Sorry, I have trouble when you say it.
A fat bomb is when you eat high levels of carbs and high levels of fat together. The reason it's bad, aka ice cream.
Is that like bread pudding?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
So ice cream, French fries, potato chips, things like that. The reason it's bad is because insulin, which is the hormone that causes you to absorb sugar, is also the hormone that causes you to store fat.
No.
So do not dip your French fries in your milkshake.
So when you eat high levels of carbs and high levels of fat together,
it's no wonder
you will absorb and store that fat. So a fat bomb is something like a French fries, something like ice cream.
So you almost have to pick.
Yes.
Either sugar or high fat.
So
You can have your ice cream with no sugar.
So if you need to have your ice cream, do so in moderation, because that is really gonna.
So a pint is moderate, right?
Yeah, quart.
So
I have-
chocolate
I
syrup
have
on potato chips.
I've known
is
family
bad?
members that would eat gallons of
Yeah.
ice cream at a
Ugh.
time, or
and
half
that's the reason why
half
fast
gallons.
food is really the issue. Fast food is
Yeah.
the issue because not only is it fried, but it's fat and it's carbs.
Okay, I do have a question then. What are some changes that easy changes that people can make right now?
Right now.
If they're unsure, like after sitting here with you, when we get off the air, I'm gonna ask you, did any of my test results come back that I'm diabetic? Because now I'm like really stressing it. But seriously, no, for those out there, maybe like me that, want to eat healthy and want to exercise, but it just doesn't always work out, or, having children and you eat whatever is left or busy and fast food. What are some easy changes that they can make right now to feel better and hopefully avoid that come their annual visit?
Absolutely. Really, really easy. First off, just moderate exercise. So going for a couple walks every week is going to be great. What you're doing is you're going to be using that sugar that's in your body, and because you use it, now you're not going to have.
How long are these walks?
So these
what are we
walks,
talking about?
We can talk 10, 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, anything extensive, right? You don't have to be sprinting. You don't have to be jogging. Just getting up, moving.
Unless you want to beat me in a race, that is, Jeb.
Yeah. So
changing the subject.
yeah, I don't know if we need to dig into that right
Another
now.
really, really good thing that you can easily do is eat your vegetables.
Eat
Okay.
vegetables.
So fiber is gonna directly help counter blood sugar levels, and the more fiber that you get in your diet, the better it's gonna be. So eat a lot more vegetables.
And to eat vegetables, you have to buy them, because if you don't have them, you're going to eat sugar.
You're right.
Well, my mom always said, if you don't buy it, then you won't eat it. And that's what I love when I grocery shop, because then there's healthy things, and the kids are eating raisins for sweet snacks. Now, Matt goes grocery shopping and there's like potato chips and pudding and things like that. And I'm
wow,
like,
you're
why do
calling
you
him
do
out
that?
right here.
I am. Well, he doesn't listen to our
going
show,
out over
so
the air, right?
he's not a member. So he's banned from listening.
This one's going to be open, so he could hear this one.
Oh, well, don't send him the link. Don't email
I
him.
won't.
I might.
Well, I might forget. Oh, thanks, Dr. Corvino. But wait a minute. Where did y'all go to lunch that day?
Me and Matt.
Yeah.
Do I need to create a distraction
What's
right
the
now?
I know. I think so.
What's the place next to
Next to that ice cream burger place.
O'Brien's Bistro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you eat healthy?
Yeah, I got it like a salmon salad.
Oh, okay. Well, that bombed, backfired.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But it was next to that burger ice cream place that just sells milkshakes and burgers.
That's pretty much like everything in town. Right?
Well, that's what they're known for. But anyway, so okay, so
If you can drive through the window, they have that.
so we can make those changes right now. So replacing the sugar
actually,
with the refined grains.
Yeah,
and,
you actually brought something good up too.
Or
One of
however.
the things you can do is just start buying less and less.
I really think that's the way to be.
because when you get it out of your
really
house,
is.
it's too
it's
late.
a lot easier.
Once you're at that point of what do I eat in your house, like when you're making that meal, it's too late.
Well,
I had this problem last night. Me and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich went round and round, and I looked. I've got my Misfit Market box coming. It's not going to be here till Thursday, so I'm kind of out of a lot of my good stuff to eat, and it was tough.
well, that's like
I didn't win, and I felt terrible about it.
when the kids run out of the cereal and the those waffles, frozen waffles that he
Let go
buys.
my ego.
Yes, whenever they run out of those, they're like, we have nothing to eat. I'm like, there's some oatmeal and some flaxseed and some strawberries.
Okay,
Go make
since
something.
we're talking about this, I know you don't have kids yet that we know of. Okay,
or that you know of, maybe.
Doctor, I know as far as I know you don't have kids, which would mean you probably don't have teenagers.
He is almost a teenager.
They don't eat anything most of the time. So would I be correct in trying to discourage them eating that Eggo waffle compared to eating usually nothing? Or do I just say, I'm glad you're eating something?
You're pro-fasting. What are you
No,
talking
I know, but I'm talking about this
Growing.
real. No, this is real. Like I have a son, and my daughter's doing much better. But my son, he's 18. I'm just glad he eats. Okay. Should I worry about it terribly to try and manage it more than him just going in to grab a quick whatever? If I have just vegetables in the house, he's not going to eat them. So what do I do? You may not have an answer because this is more of a cultural thing, but how would you recommend someone manage that? Let's say my son came to you as a client.
I would be glad.
How would you
to have
like to deal with that?
Teenage boy that would not eat anything.
I was gonna say most teenagers I know.
Oh man, they
don't stop eating.
Yes.
Yeah, but when they don't stop eating, it's not usually a good choice.
Well, will he eat peanut butter?
Yeah.
Well, then there you go. Everything peanut butter. And then throw banana on there.
Let's let Lori answer this question.
But I don't
wait a minute. You're the nutritionist.
This doesn't happen the way most people would assume it does. I don't. We don't sit down for that big family meal and he comes in and sits down and picks what he wants. That's not how it works. He comes in at like midnight or 1 o'clock and makes himself food. You know, he's an adult. He doesn't live away from home, but you know, maybe this is another topic for another day, but I just thought about it, you know, because we are creating bad habits young.
Well, that's what Lincoln wouldn't drink water. So as soon as he started preschool, I would only put water in his snack box. And guess what? The boy, every day, he's like, I want a water and an orange juice or water and a milk. And that's all he wants to drink all the time. So, and there's a lot of, he wouldn't eat meat. So then when he started kindergarten, I said, you're going to eat school lunch. And they serve him meat. And the grossest, maybe I should say that.
No, it's okay. Meat, if you're being honest about it,
you know,
even
I
though
cook.
It's not something that reflects great on some people. It's the truth.
But now he has no choice. But also he's really thin. He's lean, but he'll eat bananas after dinner if he didn't eat everything he wanted, or he'll eat, you know. So I try to make it healthy that way, or peanuts and raisins and things. But
I remember
forced food on him. So only buy what you want him to eat.
A short while ago, that we did that. We went through and we just basically cleaned house of all the bad food. And we bought basically whole food. The response I got from the kids was, y'all don't have anything good in the house. My daughter actually brought food over for her to eat while she was there because the choices were not reflective of what she wanted to eat. These are challenges. This is how it really happens, guys. We can talk about it all we want, but our kids have to change, and we got to figure out how to make them change. Right? And if they're 18 and 20, I can't be like, well, you're grounded. It doesn't work.
No, you're right.
Because they would just be like, well, you can't ground me if I don't live here, you know?
What's going to go back to, he's at the point he's not going to change unless he wants to.
Well, you know, and we could bring Haley in here on one of these, but she actually, since she started working here, has changed her diet significantly.
Oh yeah, she saw me pull a soda out of the fridge, and she's like, "Oh, do you know what that does to pennies?" And I was like, "Don't tell anyone."
We all know now.
I just need a sip.
So
I
think,
needed a sip.
You know, getting the information in front of them, or making it available to them, or maybe saying, "Hey, a cool guy like Dr. Robert Corvino says this is what you should do." Maybe they'll listen to it, you know, before they listen to Dad.
There you go. You need to have a seminar.
Cool Kids
nutrition.
with Corvino.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could figure something out that would touch, you know, that would reach them.
Absolutely. Teenagers nowadays too, they really like research. They like to do their own research. Like they like to figure things out.
Yes, they like to prove their
it's the
parents
information
wrong.
age.
Yeah.
They like Google, right?
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to that.
Until Google agrees with the parents, and then they say, "Oh, you're gonna Google's not always right."
This may be as easy as like dropping those bombs on them, like little seeds. Like, are you sure you're gonna eat that? You know what it does to you, and then let them figure out the rest. Is that how we should be? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know the answer here.
My kids eat pretty well, other than donuts. But again, that's my fault if I buy them then,
Yeah,
but if I don't have it, then
right.
But I'm a little picky on my donuts. They have
How
to be fresh.
how
from
long would
Krispy
your
Kreme.
kids survive if you didn't buy the?
Honestly, I might buy donuts once a year, so they don't know. Okay, okay. Let me rephrase
That's
that.
another good example.
So how
of a
long
fat
can they
bomb.
fast?
I only bring them home about once a year because normally I'm able to eat them before
are
I
you
get
saying
home.
they don't make the trip home?
Normally I'm able, but we'll have this discussion whenever Dr. Corvino's not
There
here.
are lots of hungry people that need food on your way home. I could see that happening.
Absolutely, I will share.
So, if you wanna join this this Wellness Way USA team, you can sign up at WellnessWayUSA.com. If you want to talk to Dr. Corvino, you can either just look him up on the web at Array Strength, or he can tell you his contact information. Robert, you want to provide that for people?
Yeah, our office line is 850-466-2302. And you can email us at arraystrength@gmail.com.
Okay, and let's go one step further on that, because I know we usually close with that, but what I wanted to do was, since this may reach some people that are outside of your normal client base, what types of things do you manage? You know, what can you help people with?
Yeah, the most common things that we work with are going to be gastrointestinal conditions. So things like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. And then we even go further with metabolic conditions like we just spoke about, diabetes. And we go into hormones with things like thyroid conditions, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and then looking into like women's health, endometriosis, PCOS. Helping with fertility and other types of conditions like that. And lastly would be autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, various arthropathies.
And you work with GPs? You work with
Yes.
other physicians?
Yeah, we completely work in association with general practitioners. Typically, the patients that I work with, I tend to have a relationship with their primary provider. So it's not in any way a competition. It's working symbiotically to help achieve better health for the patient.
Lori, you have anything?
No, just that my doctor was very receptive to your opinions. And even whenever he suggested something over the counter, he asked me to give you a call, as you know. So just a testimony that I've had positive with working with you and my doctor.
Yeah, so don't be
Experience.
afraid. If you'd like to maybe explore this, contact Dr. Corvino, shoot him an email, and maybe call him or go by and talk to him and see if he can help you. Because I really think, in my humble opinion, as a podcast host, I really think this is the future. I really think this is how we're going to solve a lot of the major problems we're having. So I would encourage you to look into it and see if it's something that may be right for you. But we will be here to give you advice, to help you with what we learn, and we're going to kind of just share that with you. And then we'll bring on experts like Dr. Corvino and Lori to help guide you, maybe to help make those decisions practically. So visit Array Strength. Arraystrength.com is your website. Is that correct? And then Wellness Way USA. We're both partners because we like sharing information. That's really all we get at it for each other. But we do want to promote Dr. Robert Corvino's methodologies, because we believe that that's the future. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on another Wellness Way USA radio show / podcast. Thank you.